So today I have with me Stacey McEwan, author of the Glacian Trilogy and A Forbidden Alchemy, which is coming out, I believe, on the 2nd of July.
Yeah,
Very
something like
excited for
that.
that.
I mean, I should know that off by heart, but yeah, let's go with 2nd of July.
So can you tell us a bit about the Glacian Trilogy?
Sure. So the Glacian Trilogy follows a 24-year-old girl who's lived her entire life in a very hostile environment called the Ledge, which is sort of a dystopian setting. It's a civilization of people that are trapped on a icy mountain shelf. With a chasm on one side that's uncrossable and mountain face on the other that's unclimbable. So they don't really know how they got there, but they know that once every season, these winged half human or human-esque creatures called Glacians fly across the chasm and take random sacrifices away. And the people that are left on the ledge have no idea what happens to them. And Dawsyn is alone and in a very violent environment. And she has not a lot to live for until she herself is taken as a sacrifice across the chasm and she learns what the hell is going on. And there begins her bid for escape and her quest to save the people on the ledge.
Yes, and it is a great trilogy, and I honestly don't know how people read it as it was coming out. Because I waited until they were all out so I could just binge it, and yeah, like cliffhangers and
Yeah.
emotional torture.
Yep. Yeah. Emotional damage.
It's got it all.
Maybe that's how I should describe the books in future. Next time someone says, "Can you describe the Glacian Trilogy?" I'll just say, "Well, it's mostly cliffhangers and emotional damage," and just leave it at that.
You're in for a rough time, not a good time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So if you're into that, please read the Glacian Trilogy.
And where did your inspiration come for the Glacian Trilogy?
I'd written quite a few books like that before, as in with the same sort of vibes, the same sort of feel. This very traditional high fantasy style world, that very much emulates like medieval times. So I'd written a couple of books like that. I also really love dystopian books. I'd written a few dystopian books that were more modern day. Um, and so but I really love it when any author can combine the two. And it's been done quite a few times and very, very well. And those happen to be some of my favorite books. So I just wanted to give it a go by myself. And I had this idea of there being a survival of the wilderness style tale, also a story that I really love that's been done a lot. But something I hadn't been seen done a lot was sort of reversing that trope where the motivation wasn't escape because escape was impossible. And so then the idea of sort of the ledge came up, this group of people who were surviving every day of their life in the wilderness, but the end goal wasn't to escape because escape wasn't a possibility for them. And I thought that would make for very interesting characters. So that was sort of the initial idea.
Um, and how much did it change, like the whole story idea and plot and everything changed throughout the editing process?
Oh, so many times. Ledge was supposed to be a standalone,
Oh,
believe
wow.
it or not. Yeah, so um, if you if you've read all three books, it ends the way it ends, and that was supposed to all happen inside one book. So I sort of already had that outline, but yeah, it was all supposed to kind of resolve in one. And halfway through the outline, I went, "Ah, I think this is going to have to be two books." So I found a sort of a split that I wasn't happy with. I thought it would be just really, really unsatisfying. Not that the end of Ledge is super satisfying, but it's at least a cut in the story where some things have been resolved and a lot hasn't. And I feel like you're allowed to end a book on a cliffhanger, but there needs to be something resolved, some questions answered for the reader that they can hang on to, even, and of course the rest of them can be unanswered. But there needs to be some smaller resolution. So I was really unhappy with that split that I'd made to create the outline into two books. But I found two really good splits in other places that could create it into three. So I thought, well, maybe I can flesh out that middle. And because I changed it to three books, I sort of had to restructure the story two or three or four times to make sure that Chasm, book two, was a good book all on its own, and to make sure it wasn't sort of a filler book and suffering from second book syndrome as like many trilogies do. And that's also something that I myself struggle with. I've attempted trilogies before, and I almost always got stuck on book two, because I felt like it wasn't a strong story, and I'd got grown bored of it, and I therefore knew readers would grow bored of it, so I'd abandon that entire thing. So yeah, this book two in Chasm was a bit of a test that I hoped would work out well, and I think it did. It's still got its book two problems, but the story had to change so many times, just to try and strengthen book two.
Yeah, I absolutely love book two, and I definitely feel like um, Ledge book one has, it's very more of like a singular story in the sense like, it doesn't expand upon characters too much, and it's just, you're getting the
Correct.
basis of the world building and everything, and um, then in book two, it expands and you see that, and then all these other problems arise, and it's kind of that whole like, oh, now shit's getting real.
Yeah, yeah, and I really liked that. I did end up splitting it into a trilogy because I feel like book two, I feel like it gave me a lot of opportunity to show um, like failed opportunities for Dawson in like this overall quest. And like, really her objective doesn't change from book one to book three. Like she has this one objective to save people on the ledge and to sort of right the world order in that way. Um, but I really like how in book two she kind of tried, but in the wrong way, a couple of times and failed. And I think that was a really fun setup for book three, where she tries again and fails and tries again. And yeah, so I really enjoyed book two in the end as well. And it's the first time that I've written a sequel and liked the sequel just as much as I liked the first book. So yeah, Chasm has a special place in my heart too. It also gave me a chance just to like let, Salem and Baltis and Ezra and these other characters kind of play because they're so funny to me. So it was like it was a good chance to sort of shift the focus a bit away from Dawson and Ryon, which book one was all about Dawson and Ryon. In book two, I got to be like, but what about these other characters, like you said? So that was really fun as well.
Yeah, and as much as I love Dawson Ryan, Ezra Salem and Bautista are my favorite. I love
Me
that trio.
too. You know what? The side characters always end up being my favorite characters, though, in any book.
Yeah. And like their chaotic comedy and everything is just great. I love it so much. I
Yes.
laughed out loud
Yeah.
so much.
It's a nice little like relief, I think. Dawson and Ryan are so serious all the time that I'm like, bring Ezra back in here. Let him lighten the mood.
And with that, like, how important was that? Like, clearly you've got the balance because you've got some really serious characters and then some comedy. But I also like throughout reading it, like, I love their comment, but I do think Dawson has a little bit of comedy, like in her own way, which
Yeah.
actually reminds me a lot of like the stuff that you do on TikTok and stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
ah.
Oh yeah, for sure. She's got a very dry sense of humor and she's very sarcastic and that's very much me. Whereas Ezra and Salem together are just like a clown show. And then there's Baltis, who's got a very dry sense of humor, like I do as well. So I always tend to make the women, like just by accident, a little bit of a self-insert when it comes to like their maturity level and their style of humor. So yeah, there's definitely moments where Dawson is passing comments and judgments on other people. The really fun thing about Dawson is that because of where she was raised, I got to make her, I got to like write her with no filter ever. Like she's really never taking care of anyone else's feelings, like
Yeah.
because um, to her those things are meaningless. And then there's Baltisa who is quite similar, where she's just too damn old to care about what she's saying and how she's saying it. But both of those women have a lot of love for these other characters, for Salem and for Ezra, and for Ryan, for Rivden, like for any of these characters, because they're holistically very, very good
Mm.
characters. And Dawsyn and Baltis can be very dry, and can seem a little callous at times as well, a little cold.
Yeah.
But in at their core, they're champions for good people, which I really love about them. So they definitely both carry this energy of like, I can make fun of them. You can't make fun of them.
And I love that dynamic in books, and even the whole, like, I don't care about anyone, but don't you dare touch them.
Exactly.
And now that the series is finished, do you miss the characters in the story?
Yeah, I do. It's weird stepping away from characters like that because you literally immerse yourself in that world for so long, um, that when it was done and I was looking to write something else now, I found myself middling the two stories together by accident, like, and just in like your writer's haze where you've already been in front of the computer for 4 hours straight and you haven't gotten up yet, and like, words have ceased to hold any meaning for you, and you don't know what day it is. I start going, oh, wait, I need to make sure that we add Salem in here. And I'm like, wait, no, that's a different story. And so all the characters start to run together, and all the settings start to run together a little bit in that haze. So yeah, it's very weird stepping away from them when you've been in that world for a long time, for sure. And I miss them a lot. Um, but I think the things that I miss are, the banter and like, and the repertoire and those sorts of things. And there's no reason why you can't, put those things into the next book. And so that's what I tend to do. I tend, that one little thing that I loved from that character, can be repeated in this next character in their own way.
Yeah.
Um, so in A Forbidden Alchemy, Donnie is my silly little goofball, and in his, in very, very different ways. But I think anyone who reads the Glacian Trilogy and then reads A Forbidden Alchemy, if they choose to, they're going to match up Donnie and Ezra immediately and be like, oh, there's that little comic relief baby that can do no wrong. He's just there to be funny. Um, so yeah, I that's what I tend to do. I miss the character enough that I'm like, I'm gonna find a way to incorporate all that good stuff in this new book.
Yeah, it's just like an alternate universe.
Yeah, exactly. But in my mind, yeah.
Did you have a favorite scene or anything to write throughout the trilogy?
Oh, I think one of my most favorite scenes, the first thing that I wrote actually, um, was in Ledge, and it was when Ryan and Dawsyn were first coming down the mountain, and making their way into the valley, and she kind of wakes up, and he's like, "I'm not trying to kill you, so just relax." And she's like, "Okay, but I will, in fact, kill you unless you tell me what the hell is going on." That whole scene I wrote first. And it changed a bunch of times because I didn't know what was happening and where it would go. But I like that was sort of like the first interaction between them that, I could think of in my mind, and kind of like sparked that fire. And so I just really wanted to put it down and see what it looked like, and see what Ryan and Dawson's dynamic would be like. So I think that one, anytime I think back to writing the trilogy, that's what I think of. I think of writing that scene. And rewriting that scene a whole bunch of times as well because it was just very quintessentially Dawson, and it sort of set the tone for exactly what I want that character to look like and sound like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My I reckon my favorite scene would be in Chasm, and it's the bonfire with everyone, and they're just all having a good time and they're
Oh, I
happy,
love
and I'm
that.
like,
They're having like a little party.
yeah, I'm like, you're all just good and happy with each other, and you've got, found family, and it's all nice. But of course, it's in
Yeah.
the middle of the series, so it's not going to
And
stay
yet
that way.
Stacey's about to come in and fuck it up. Yeah.
And this is your first published series.
Yes.
So how does that feel? Not only to have completed it, but it's been translated into other languages and it's got audiobooks. How does all that feel?
so weird. Yeah, incredibly. I still wake up all the time and go, I can't believe that that actually happened. Yeah, I've been writing for a really long time, but never really pursued publishing like with any kind of gusto because it felt like a pipe dream. So every now and then I think, oh, maybe maybe someone will want this manuscript, and I'd sort of look into querying agents and then querying publishers, and I dabble in that for a bit and have no success, and so then I'd sort of withdraw from it and go, oh, never mind, I was just kidding, and sort of go back into my little space, and I'd keep teaching and writing was this creative outlet, and I had it in my mind that before I died, I'd like to publish one book, even if I published it myself. I wanted to publish one book, and I thought I've got no idea how to publish a book myself. But then the pandemic kind of rolled around, and I downloaded TikTok. I got into Book Talk. I started making videos on there, which was incredibly fun. Developed this following, and I thought maybe I can figure out how to publish this book myself. It just seemed like such a boss move, like something that I really wasn't capable of. And I'm not business minded at all. And I'm a very type B person, so I just thought like I'm probably like the last person who should be setting out on this endeavor. But uh, uh, luckily, I had all of a sudden I had these inroads and these people to talk to about it. You know, there was just so many self-published authors on TikTok who were generous with their time and willing to chat with me for a little bit about how to get started and what to do. Um, and so that's what I did and fully intended to self-publish this book. But once I started talking about it online to promote it, I had publishers and agents sort of turn up in my inbox and ask if they can read the manuscript. And so I kind of handed it over willy-nilly. And all of a sudden I had an agent, and then all of a sudden I had a book deal. And I had to make this decision about whether or not I was going to pull the plug on this whole self-publishing journey that I'd spent the last year working towards, and go with the book deal or not. And it felt like a huge gamble at the time. I really thought, "Oh, what if I go with the book deal and it doesn't yield anything? And then like all this work that I've done that I've thrown down the drain, like I can't get that back." And my husband said, you know, you can always write another book and self-publish that, but you might not ever get another book deal. Like you just don't know. And which is a very valid point. So I went with the book deal, thinking like this might be my only chance. And that was with Angry Robot, and they published a trilogy, and thankfully it did go very well. So yeah, no regrets, and it still amazes me to this day because it really all just felt like a whirlwind. It really all just everything felt like it happened and fell into place all at once, and yeah, and it's still bizarre to me. It's still strange. It's still wild to me that real people read it. I see pretty photos on Instagram and things, and I go, oh, like, heart, leave a comment. There's still this voice in the back of my brain going, calm down, it's one person that read the trilogy, um, and it doesn't mean anything. But um, every now and then, you know, you do an event and people actually show up to it, and it still blows my mind. Um, that that happens. I remember I had an event in Bow Desert. Do you know where Bow Desert is?
No.
Okay, so it's not too far away. It's about an hour and a half away from where I live.
Okay.
But it's inland. And the last time I went to Bow Desert, I was a kid, and it's a country town. It's very small. Um, it's got a very low population. There's only sort of two roads in and out. Um, and it's a lovely town. But I thought, what a place to have a book event. But alas, my publishers had said, Bow Desert Library really wants you to come out and do an in-person book event. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to be sitting there with six people because there's no way that a place like Bow Desert knows who the hell I am. Um, and that event was full, and that was bizarre to me. Yeah, and it was definitely one of those moments where I went, I can't believe that this is happening. I can't believe there's anyone who Bow Desert who knows what my name is. So yeah, it's surprising every day.
I definitely think being an author is one of those careers where it is a bit, not to say disorienting, but maybe a bit like jarring or whatever the difference, because you spend so long by yourself in a computer or a pen and paper and you're writing
Yes.
and you're in your head, and then it goes out into the world, and then suddenly other people talk about it and other people know who you are. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jarring is a great word to describe it. It is very jarring, and it's very like it's a very big discrepancy between those two different things because it's either just you and it's incredibly solitary and it's literally just you in your head, um, to being you and like thousands of people who are commenting and reviewing and passing judgment on it and picking it apart and pulling out their favorite things and throwing back at you their favorite quotes that you wrote. Yeah, it's a bizarre experience, and I'm not sure from the authors that I've spoken to who have been in the game for a long time, I don't think it ever stops being bizarre.
Yeah, it will just be like a cycle. You're like, you know, next book, next series, you're still back in your head again. And then it's like, oh, people like this one too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yay, it
exactly.
worked.
Yeah, yeah, precisely. Yeah.
And you put up a speech that you did, and I think it was around the release of Valley, talking about how, you know, a lot of the hype and everything you owe to TikTok. However, the term TikTok author is quite misleading and everything. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was a very strange experience being on TikTok and then sort of becoming an author through that. Um, because what happened was everyone sort of made this assumption then that I was an overnight success story. Um, and firstly, the thing is about being an author is that if you might see someone come out and say, I've gotten myself a book deal, they're not going to see any kind of monetary compensation for maybe a year and a half from that point, like it's going to take a while for the sort of the compensation of their labors to make their way to them. Um, so I used to get comments from people in my real life. I'd turn up to work in my Hyundai, and like a few people who knew what I was doing would go, "Oh, well, she's still at work, and she's not in a Lamborghini, so obviously the book's not going that well." And I think, "Oh my God, I am so far removed." But yeah, it was a strange experience going from being a teacher and just making these silly videos online to then being an agent author and then a person who had a book deal and who was releasing this book and doing promotions and doing all that sort of thing. And then suddenly the book was out, and all the promo work that I did, whether it was writing an article for a blog or for a website or hopping on a podcast or going on a radio show, and they always introduced me as a TikTok creator turned author or a TikTok author. And and at first it didn't bother me at all. But we're now, like 4 years in, and this is my full-time job, and I'm still introduced as a TikTok author. And I find that so strange. And I went on a panel at a writers' festival, and there was three authors, and then the person who was moderating was an agent. And she said to the audience, um, this is a really interesting panel because we sort of have authors at all different levels. We have this author who is like a New York Times best-selling author. We've got this author who's just starting out. She's releasing her debut. And then we've got this author who is a TikTok author. And that's how she introduced the three of us. And I thought, what's the difference between an author on TikTok who's on TikTok and like any other author? Um, and the other two authors were on TikTok, and that's what I didn't get. So I thought, so how come is it just because I have the following on TikTok, I suppose. But like that label sort of always came with this, oh, but she's a TikTok author, and so that comes with a different caliber of book. I had someone say, oh, so you're a romance author then, because someone said, oh, she's that author from TikTok, and they said, are you a romance author then? And I thought, Well, yes, I write romantasy, but why the leap and why the disdain in your voice? So yeah, it was a very strange experience. It's still brought up all the time. Even my new publishers have written all over Forbidden Alchemy, like book talk sensation, and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm ever going to escape that. But the thing is, I'm not sure if I want to either because it's also it's truly is like the reason why. Um, I got my first book deal. Like it was because I put my face all over TikTok and started talking very, very loudly about this book that I was writing and this journey that I was going on. And if I hadn't have done that, then it wouldn't have, drawn the attention of these people who are interested in it. And my first readership came solely just from not even from Instagram or Threads or Facebook or anywhere else, but solely just from TikTok because it was the only place where I was present. Um, so yeah, it's just a very weird position, a very weird wall to throw yourself up against. What I don't like and what I would like to shed is the misconception that I logged on to Book Talk one day and thought I might be a writer, and then it just happened. Because I don't know anyone who that's true for. Um, Almost every single person, every single book talk author who sort of got their first, like, who sort of cut their teeth there, they were writing long before they downloaded that app, and they were kind of honing that craft long before they came up with the idea that they might one day be an author. It's just that most of us thought that it would never happen, and social media like gives us this like strange inroad and this strange amount of power as well, the same amount of like this strange leverage that we can use against the industry. So yeah, I would like to shed that. That's sort of the thing that grinds my gears a bit is this the idea that I have to forfeit 14 years worth of manuscripts that are sitting on my desktop that I wrote and all of the hours it took to write those 14 failed manuscripts, all to be called an overnight sensation. Um, it feels a little unfair.
Yeah. And I definitely think like it's true that you did get a lot of hype and everything and you got a following through TikTok, which is great, but that's not what made you a writer.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's kind of like a bit more what they're implying when they say a TikTok author, which is what it's another thing. Like, I don't like saying that people are talented because I feel like it's an excuse, it's like excuses the skill and hard work that they put into their craft. Like,
yeah, I agree.
like you said, no one just decides to be a writer and then writes a book overnight and is great. Like it's a
Yeah, the
skill that requires a lot of
skills
honing.
don't arrive, out
Mm.
of thin air. They truly don't. And I know it seems like sometimes there's an author or two online who got a following and then they went, I think I might write their own book. They might even say that. I can guarantee you they've been writing for a lot longer than what you think. Um, the discipline it takes to write a book doesn't arrive from nowhere. Anyone who's ever sat down and attempted to write a book, a novel length story, should know that. It doesn't,
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't kind of manifest itself out of thin air.
and it's definitely the type of craft where you have to have this full on drive and desire to do it. You can't just be like, oh, it's not like a fallback. Like,
Correct.
oh, I can always just write a book. It's fine. No,
Yeah,
it's
just
intense,
yeah,
and to
just
be,
write a book. Yeah,
yeah.
easy. Just I've got a spare 3 days. We'll just do it over the long weekend.
And so, can you tell us a little bit about Forbidden Alchemy?
Of course. What would you like a synopsis?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll try for an elevator pitch. So, a Forbidden Alchemy is about a world that's divided between the magical and the non-magical. I call them artisans and craftsmen. And when my two main characters, Nina and Patrick, head to their ceremony to decide whether they're magical or non-magical, an artisan or a craftsman, they stumble across a very well guarded but devastating national secret that separates them. And when they come back together, they're on opposite sides of a raging class war that they themselves accidentally started. as children by uncovering that secret. Yeah.
I'm so excited for it. I've
Yeah.
pre-ordered the special edition from QVD.
Yay.
As soon as I saw that on your story, I was like, yes.
Yes, it's so fun. We never, Australians never get the sprayed edges, and I really like pushed for it. I was like, is there any way that we could also get the sprayed edges in Australia? But yeah, I'm with Atria Books in Australia. It was Simon and Schuster, but we've now they now have their own imprint, which is awesome. So I moved over to Atria Books with Anthea, and she said absolutely we can, and she's a legend for that because I really thought that I was going to have to beat down some doors. But no, she was like, absolutely, let me see what I can do. So yeah, we're very lucky.
And it's described as a gaslight fantasy,
Mm.
gas lamp fantasy. Um,
Oh, there's
can
some
you
gaslighting too.
um, can you like explain a bit what that is? Because I know quite a lot of people that don't necessarily know, and
Yeah.
yeah.
So it's basically any fantasy that's emulating like a Victorian era, um, and specifically Victorian era England. Um, so steampunk is sort of is often very gas lampy. This is less steampunky, so I'm reticent to label a Forbidden Alchemy as being steampunk. So I think the best way to label like this sort of vibes is to say that it's a gas lamp fantasy. I think that's probably more accurate.
And this is it going to stay a duology? Is that like full on set in stone?
No, definitely not. It's definitely not staying a duology. I have no self-control. I can tell you right now that I've almost finished book two, and it's definitely going to be at least a trilogy. I've yeah. I have issues, Phoebe. I can't keep the outline the way it's supposed to be. No, I finished book one and I actually had a conversation with my editor there and then and went, I don't think this is going to be, I'm so sorry, I don't think this is going to be a duology. I think it's going to be a trilogy. Thankfully, she was like, I'm psyched about that, so don't worry about it. So,
Yeah, you just
luckily,
present it as like, well, surprise, you now have another book under your
mm,
belt.
exactly. I was sort of like, surprise, you're publishing yet another book with me. You're welcome. No, they were very excited about it. They're very supportive. So thankfully, I didn't have that to contend with. But I do now have a third book to write, which is fun.
And the has your writing process changed much from the Glacian Trilogy to a Forbidden Alchemy?
No, not at all. I feel like I write the same way, even when I try to try out different strategies, different writing strategies. Like I always just fall back into the same patterns. Um, I'm just luckier now. I'm less time poor than I was when I was writing the Glacian Trilogy. When I was writing the Glacian Trilogy, I was still working as a teacher, and so I was trying to balance those two things. So I was doing a lot of writing at night, after my kids went to bed. Now I don't have to do that, which is great. I just try to, and I can kind of um, just do a little bit a day as well, rather than having these full days. When I was teaching, I switched to part-time. I was part-time teaching, and part-time writing, and sort of transitioning into this, like, can I make a full-time gig out of this writing thing? But it meant when on my 2 days at home, I had to spend the entire 6 hours while my kids were at school. I spent those 6 hours like glued to the computer because I had to make use of those 6 hours in the best way that I could. Now I kind of don't have to do that. I can write for 2 hours a day, and put it aside and do other things and make social media content, answer emails and do interviews and things like that. So I've got a nice balance now, which is great. Highly recommend that you don't write until 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yes. And do you mainly read fantasy, romance, romantasy?
Yeah, I do. But it's not the only genres that I read. Those are just probably they probably house my favorite titles in
Yeah.
those genres. But I'm reading. What am I reading right now? Hang on. I'm reading. Oh, this is Girl A. I've read this before, but I'm reading the counterpart to that, which is called Day One. Um, I like pretty much anything that has any kind of really, really solid plot line. So I never read nonfiction. Um, I read tons of historical fiction. Oh, here we go. I finished. This is one of my favorites. All the Light We Cannot See. That's a beautiful book. So I don't just read romance and fantasy. Those are just um, they're probably my favorites. I'm just biased.
And do you ha all of the stuff that you've written that hasn't been published, was that all fantasy as well?
No, lots of couple of them were just contemporary romance. One of them was just historical fiction. Lots of them uh, were early on when I was much younger, were very Twilight slash Divergent slash Hunger Games esque. Um, I really cut my teeth on those books. Um, and I think one of them was I tried my hand at like a murder mystery type thing, which did not work out. Phoebe, that one will never see the light of day. I just kept making the characters kiss by accident. I'm like, what if they just kiss?
And do you think you'll delve into other genres writing them, or maybe stick with romantasy?
I like this is home for me right now.
Yeah.
Any of the stories floating around my mind are still very romantic linked. If I do, it will probably be something like a historical romance or a contemporary romance. So I don't think I'll ever leave romantic subgenres because those are my favorite things to write. Yeah, but right now, romantasy is home for me. So no plans to delve outside of that yet.
I absolutely love romance as a subplot. I think it just adds, a bit more.
Me too. Me too.
And do you have a process for writing like multiple POVs, or do you just like wing it?
Oh, that's a great question. To be honest with you, I kind of wing it. Usually the POVs crop up without me really intending them to. Like I'll just go, "Ah, this really needs to be told from this character's point of view. So they're going to have a point of view in this story. But I'm a bit ruthless with my editor. I kind of just throw all the POVs that I want and then I send it to the editor and go, if you don't like it, then just tell me and I'll change it. So my poor editor always gets shoved like just a slew of POVs, and then I kind of let them determine which ones should remain and which ones don't need to be there. Um, so yeah, it's really I think I really just wing it. I do know who my two main POVs are always going to be, and they're always the main characters. And as for when it should switch, I really just go off what feels right for that chapter. I always know what's going to happen in the chapter as I'm writing it. So yeah, I just make a decision about it. Like would it be more fun to make it from this person's point of view or the other? Um, yeah, so I just fly
And
by the seat of my pants.
and do you have to take some time before you like are switching when writing, or
Um, No, but I will say that I only write about 500 words at a time before I stop and take a break. Um, anyway, so I usually have like a little timer and I'll sprint write for 50 minutes. Um, and then I'll stop. In that 50 minutes, I could have written anywhere between like 10 words and 800 words. Like it really just depends on how fast flowing it was. And then I'll take a break anyway. So I can't write a chapter in that amount of time. There's always breaks between chapters anyway. So I think the break just kind of happens naturally, but I don't need to get into the other characters' headspace. That sort of only happens if I've got a point of view that hasn't come up in a long time, usually from a side character, and I need to remember like how that character speaks and thinks. Um, and where I last left them off as well, if they're separated from the other two main characters. Like, how did I end things for them the last time I spoke about them? So, yeah.
do you have any advice for writers in general?
Um, my favorite advice that was given to me that I say I pass on as well, that I never follow, by the way, is is to write forwards and to write through the story, and not to write backwards. And by that we mean don't stop partway through the story and then start editing what you've already written.
Um,
Just keep writing through the story. So even if you get to a point where you're like, wait, I've had a brain snap, I have an idea, um, I'm going to change the story in this way, but it means that all of this stuff needs to change, that I've already written. Don't change it yet. You can change it later. Just write through the story. Otherwise, the story never gets finished. And that's so correct because I'm currently trapped in that cycle right now where I've been almost finished this second book for like 2 months now.
oh.
But I keep having another brain snap and going, wouldn't it be cool if? And then I go back and rewrite a section and I need to stop. I need to just write through the story and then go back later and fix up all the stuff that doesn't make sense and sort of marry up all the details. So yeah, that's the best piece of advice I've ever been given, and it saved me a few times. And now, in my age and wisdom, I've decided to ignore it, and I'm paying for it. So, right through the story, fix it up later.
And other than the initial writing phase, do you have a favorite part of the publishing process?
Editing is my favorite part of the publishing process. I love to edit. And I think it's because it's quite rewarding to go back and sort of it's scary, but it's rewarding to go back and read your own work and go, oh, I'm not shit. Because you really when you hand in a rough draft, I always end a rough draft and think that was awful. Like it's truly such a mess, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to fix it, or it's going to take a lot of work to fix it. And so I sort of get trapped in that, like, oh God, I don't want to read it, because I'm just going to hate myself. And then I get it back, and I start reading it, and I'm like, oh, that's not bad. It could
Oh,
be
I did
worse.
that.
Oh, yeah. It takes like one sentence to bring me back on track. I'm very fickle. One sentence, and I'm like, oh, that was good. I like that sentence. Okay.
I can do
Um,
this.
yeah, exactly. And so it always puts me back into a good mood. And so I think that's why I was sort of always writing the first draft in a state of like anxiety sometimes, where I'm either flowing and everything's good and I'm feeling good about it, or I'm like, this is terrible, but I need to keep writing, and I'm like, so I'm just a bit anxious about it. Editing, it always feels great. Yeah, it always feels fun and very rewarding. And when I do come up against problems in the manuscript, I'm there and I have the time to fix it. So, yeah, there's less spiraling that happens in editing, I think.
And I think it would also be easier because you don't have that the fear of the blank page.
Oh, yeah,
Like there's something already
absolutely.
there.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like a nice weight off. It feels like there's less bandwidth required, to edit than there is to write on a blank page, like you said. So yeah, I think it's probably less threatening, a little bit more relaxing.
And in terms of like having your story in your head and like the voice of your characters, do you struggle to read other books while writing?
Sometimes it's a huge relief, to read something that's completely different. I will say that because I write romantasy, I won't read romantasy while I'm writing it. I'll read something else, which is why I turn to those other genres, because it's so far removed that the two don't become meddled. But it's really nice to hear like a fresh voice in your head when all you've been listening to is yourself. Um, so yeah, I actually think that that's helpful. I think that it becomes tough when you're reading something with a very similar tone, very similar vibes, and I'm always fearful that the two will kind of start to combine. Um, and with the climate of the industry right now, where every second person is being accused of plagiarism, that's quite terrifying as an author to think like you might like accidentally kind of meld one idea with something that already exists because that's what you've been reading while you're writing. So I stay away from romantasy altogether while I'm drafting, and just read other things. And it's really nice. It's nice to hear like a different voice in your head that's not your own. And then I just get back to my romantasy after I've finished drafting, or if I'm taking a break from drafting, then I'll jump back into romantasy again.
And is reading still like, because writing is like your full-time job now, is it still as enjoyable?
No, it's not as enjoyable. Um, I wish it makes me a bit sad actually. I wish that it
Mm.
was, but one of the things that comes with this job is not just it is that you have to read. And I think placing that on any person, like as human beings, it automatically then becomes like a little bit of a chore. As soon as you know that you have to do it. So, it's just the nature of the job. Um, there's always an author who's asking you to blurb their book, so you have to read that book. You've got an interview with this author and you're moderating, so here's their book. You need to read it before you go do this interview. So you've always got like a little stack of books that you're supposed to be reading for one thing or another. And it's like your mandatory reading list, and so it then becomes less enjoyable because one, you're often not picking the books like that have been on your TBR or that you want to read yourself, and two, you've got a time limit now to like get that book read. And so as soon as you place like those stipulations on anyone, the act of reading becomes something that you have to do and not something necessarily that you want to do. The good news is that most of the books you get given are great, and so as soon as you start reading them, you're like, oh no, this is fine. I can dig in and I can start reading this. But yeah, but my TBR pile hasn't been touched in like God knows how long. And it's because you've got to prioritize that stuff that you need to read first. So thankfully it's all good. But and it's like, oh, like what a problem to have that you have to for work read books in a genre that you love. It's
Yeah.
it's not a problem. But yeah, if you ask me whether or not reading is as enjoyable, no, it's not. Um, just because you've got like timestamps on it now, and people who are relying on you, and people who need you to get it finished, um, because there's something that they need on the other end of it. So there's a little bit more pressure there to finish a book. Um, but yeah, like I said, what a problem to have.
And do you have a favorite book or series that is not your own?
Yeah, I have a million of them. Um, I really love the Caraval series by Stephanie Garber. Um, that's one of my sort of favorites of all time. I really liked Six Crows and Cooker Kingdom. Um, what else? I really love my lovely friend's book, um, Hannah Nicole Mayer. She writes Assistant to the Villain. She's releasing her third book, Accomplice to the Villain. I really love that series. My other friend, Caven, um, she has a series, a duology. The first book's called A Fallen Sword. I really love that duology. I think it's one of my favorite duologies I've ever read. I love anything Danielle Jensen writes. I loved The Bridge Kingdom. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with those. Otherwise, I'm gonna talk all day.
Just keep going.
Yeah, I'm like, and the next one, oh, and Red Rising. I've finished reading Pierce Brown's Red Rising series, and that's phenomenal. I loved that too.
And speaking of writing friends, you recently went on a trip with some.
I
How
did.
important do you think it is for writers to have writing friends?
Oh, I think it's life-saving. Community is life-saving no matter which way you spin it, no matter what your job is, no matter what you're doing. Um, Writing is very solitary. So that community doesn't just kind of present itself. You have to go looking for it. We're very lucky that we have the technology that we do, and the social media platforms that exist so that we can seek out those people a lot more easily. That's how I found those friends. And we were just a group of people who were sort of all in the exact same boat. We were all very present online and making this content and developing a following and hoping that it would turn into a readership. And we were all wanting to release our first published stories, and make a go of this thing. So that was purely just a group of women who were all in the exact same position. And we're now best of friends, which is fabulous. And yeah, if you had told me a few years ago that your people are going to be from all over the world, from all kinds of different walks of life, from all different ages, all different ability levels, all speaking all kinds of different languages, um, and you told me it was as diverse as it's going to be, and yet somehow it works perfectly, I wouldn't have believed you. And I think anyone that kind of looks at our group and knows us individually probably wonders how it works. I think the reason it works is because we are all so, so, so different, but we have this thing in common. Um, so in that way, we're alike, and yeah, it works. And I don't think I'd be able to do this job if I didn't have a community of people that I could turn to vent and whinge and celebrate with. Yeah, it makes it all a lot sweeter and a lot more bearable when things don't go right, which they so often don't in this industry. So, yeah, very thankful for that. And if you're a writer and you need community, like find it, like it's there to be found for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I always think like if you're thinking in terms of like a normal regular 9 to 5 jobs, if you're going to equate it to that, then these people would be your colleagues. And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
often, I often say that I think being a writer, author, or a lot of creative jobs too, that it's the type of career that you don't necessarily have competition
Yeah.
because you're not only ever going to read one book.
Exactly. We're not selling vacuum cleaners. The people who are buying books are not holding on to that one book for 7 years until it dies and then getting a new book to replace that book. That's not how it happens. Readers are ravenous. Um, and yeah, and so in that way, we don't have competition with each other. There's the only thing that we can possibly do for each other is help each other.
And it's a beautiful relationship. And even in that, like, people that could get into your book, they see you hanging out with the other authors and they're like, oh, I wonder what this is.
Yeah,
And
precisely. And yeah, and I think that's I think it's such a human thing to do to slip into the mentality of competition, right? Like we've really been geared towards it our whole lives. So it's a very natural human instinct to fall into that. But it's also led to like a lot of strife in the writing community time and time and time again. Um, and it probably will continue to, even between readers. But yeah, authors are never in competition with one another. The best-selling lists mean nearly nothing when it comes down to it. They're fun and they're like a great like achievement and they're a great thing that you can put beside your name, but that's kind of it. It doesn't really extend much further than that. Um, all authors can do is lift each other up, is to support each other. If someone loves that book, and it's a little bit like your book, that's a great opportunity for you to say so. Um, rather than be annoyed or feel like you've missed some opportunity, you've missed out on something because these two similar books, one's doing better than the other. You can only benefit off that as an author. And yeah, what I've learned from this group of girls is that we're sort of all varying degrees of amount of books, amount of titles that we've released. The style and stuff that we write in is all very, very different. The types of books that we write, even if it's in the same genre, deviate from each other quite a bit. And yet, a lot of our readers are transferable and they will go from one to the other to the other. Um, so yeah, that's what I love about it, and it was a great learning curve for me too, because this is not something that I knew going into it. I truly did think that I was in competition with a lot of authors, um, but it's not the case at all. Like I said, we're not selling vacuum cleaners, we're selling books, and readers are ravenous. They'll buy seven at a time.
yeah,
Yeah, same.
I just did that on Saturday.
Exactly. And if they like it, what's the first thing they do when they put it down? If they really loved it, the first thing they do when they put it down is go on Google and say books like that one. Give me more. I need to fill this void. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a really beautiful thing, and even just the whole mentality behind it of that, it's something that everyone can succeed in if they want to.
Yeah. Yeah, there's room at the top for everyone is the idea.
And just to touch back on your TikTok for a little bit, um, where do you get your inspiration for your like little skits?
I don't know. Initially, it was just things that I'd noticed myself. I started out making skits about um, romance tropes specifically. Most of them were transferable to things like YA and fantasy. Um, because they're usually quite romance centric, those stories, and those were my favorite stories. But the thing about romance is it's purposefully and intentionally very formulaic. Um, and it is that way because that's what the readers want, right? That's what we seek. If we're picking up a romance book, then we expect the story to travel in a certain trajectory, and the trajectory is towards it a happily ever after. And so, because of that, lots of those stories are following like a similar path, and therefore that's why tropes exist. And so, I started out just by making fun of these things that I'd noticed because I'd read just a slew of romance in every single genre. But there's these things, like these little things that pop up again and again that I liked to make fun of. And they could be like the smallest things. They could be like the dude who keeps picking lint off his shirt. Or it could be like really big things, like like an entire like miscommunication trope. But they were really fun to make fun of. So that's how I sort of got started. And then somehow I incorporated my husband into that because I thought it'd be really funny if I was trying to turn him into like one of these fictional men. And I knew him well enough that he would like resist that, like to his core. And so I thought that would be really funny. So we kind of started on that. It always just changes. Sometimes I just pick up the phone and stare at it for a little while with the camera facing me until an idea hits, and something comes out of nowhere. But if you're someone who consumes a lot of media, like if you read a lot of books and watch a lot of different TV shows and they're sort of all in the same genre, something always crops up that you're like, nah, I'm going to make fun of that. That's pretty funny. Um, yeah, so lately my thing has been like making fun of villains and things like kings and and stuff that are like constantly in different like fantasy media, but also in real life, and like how like they're not so far removed from like actual political heads, and that disparity is like horrifying, but also kind of funny. So yeah, I have no idea where the inspiration comes from, to be honest. I think I sit there like a blob, and then all of a sudden I think, wouldn't it be funny? Um, yeah, so I don't know. I one day I'll run out of ideas, I'm sure.
um, yeah, I absolutely love them. Other than, being really funny, I also think it's, that like they are relatable things, and the things that, like, if you're an avid reader and stuff like that, you've come across these things, and we all
Yeah,
have those same
it's relatable.
thoughts.
Exactly, we do. We all have those same thoughts.
And but like, and you're making fun of it, but at the same time, when reading it, majority of the time you love it.
Exactly. We're too busy like devouring it, really, to pay much notice to it or to pick it apart, I suppose. Um, but yeah, like I kind of love that. I like one of my favorite things to do is pick apart media, um, and hear about everyone's different headcanon and everyone's, that's really fun for me. I love doing that. It's something that I do with those bookish friends that I have overseas. It's we quite literally Zoom at least once a month and just do that, where we just piece everything apart. And yeah, it's one of my favorite hobbies, I think. And I think readers do it because we're critical thinkers. Um, and the more you read, the more you're able to like to think critically. And so we do all have those thoughts. And so it's funny whenever someone comes online and kind of pokes fun at it because you're like, oh my God, yes, that does happen.
Yeah, and yeah, because I clearly found you through all of those skits and stuff, and
Yeah,
I was like, oh yes, I love this. I'm like, author by author, even before reading the books, I was like, if she's this funny, the books
yeah.
are gonna be great,
Yeah,
and they
and in
were.
that way, I lure readers in because I'm like, look at me, a clown, fun and games, and then I'm like, have pain and torture.
So thank you so much for coming on. Where can readers find you and your books?
I am online on, where am I? Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Threads. My handle is Stacey McEwan Books. I also have a website called staceymckewanbooks.com. And you can find my books linked on any of those pages and anywhere where you can buy books.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I can't wait to
Thank you.
read A Forbidden Alchemy. That's one thing that's seeing all your stories about people loving it. I'm like, I just need it.
I
I'm
can,
like, I
I'll
already know
send
it's
one
going to
to
be
you.
great.
I'll send one to you. I have the power.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
Thank you.